Hey Starseeds, welcome back to my channel. It's Debra here. Today I have something a little bit out of the ordinary. I'm going to be talking to you about why I stopped smoking weed. This article is my personal experience with smoking weed. I've been smoking weed since I was about 13, so that's 30 years. Not every day, of course, nothing like that. And in the last 10 years, very, very minimally. But I've finally given it up for good. And I just thought that I would share my reasons why with you. And it really has to do with DNA activation and the level that I am at in my light body activation. And this is not any kind of moral judgment, okay? So just let me say that off the bat. And remember, as with any spiritual teaching, take what resonates and leave the rest. Okay, guys, so here we go. Cannabis for Starseeds, or why I stopped smoking weed. Lest you misunderstand this article as an attempt to pass judgment or virtue signal, let me open with a confession. As both a Canadian and someone who has struggled with depression since a young age, I have a long history of using marijuana medicinally as well as recreationally. For many years, weed has become a ubiquitous and socially acceptable recreational drug, and even more so now as it rides the coattails of its widely recognized medical efficacy and subsequent legalization in Canada as well as several U.S. states. In no way do I dispute cannabis's miraculous plant medicine. And yet this doesn't mean I think we should all be smoking it. I'm talking specifically of cannabis with its THC properties intact, not CBD. Again, I reiterate that I am by no means anti-weed. A weed smoker for many years, I gave up smoking it only when it became undeniable to me that its effects on me were far outweighing the benefits. I'm not going to lie, I was really sad to have to give up cannabis. Alcohol wasn't that bad, especially because near the end my use was infrequent and very light. But as a Starseed light worker committed to realizing my full potential in this incarnation, it had to be done. It's my desire to be really transparent about my own story with cannabis so you can have a point of reference. If you've been on the fence about whether you should continue to consume it, I hope my story can inspire you to quit. It's my opinion that once you get to a certain point in your vibrational frequency, you find that you just don't need it like you used to. This could be because you've undergone so much inner work, physical purification, and alchemical transformation that you've healed from the disease that caused the symptoms that weed helped to mitigate. Again, I'm not referring to CBD oil, but consuming cannabis with THC. Then it becomes a question of continuing to use it recreationally once you've mitigated your disease, okay, or the symptoms from it. In that case, you'll know when it's time to quit. You'll know because you'll start to worry if it's hindering your Starseed mission. Or maybe your process will start to parallel mine. I said that I quit because I realized that the effects were far outweighing the benefits. Which effects do I mean exactly? Where do I begin? As I got closer to full light body activation, it became clear to me that the use of marijuana or alcohol, even in the slightest amount, would send my vibrational frequency plummeting for days afterwards. During its use, I'd feel euphoric, clear, expanded, and all of my chakras would be happily aligned and blissfully receptive. But as little as 2 puffs off a pen or a joint would leave me feeling like I'd been hit by a truck for up to 3 days afterwards. Such a hazy residue did it leave me with. It didn't matter if I was smoking sativa or indica, organic or non-organic. Consuming even the tiniest amounts was slowing me down. So after much deliberation, research, and discussion with my guides and higher self, I came to the conclusion that me and weed were no longer a frequency match. So cannabis and playing small. I really knew something had started to change because I was experiencing a newfound guilt the day after using. So discussing this with my collective Pleiadian guide, it was explained to me that there was no external moral judgment for the consumption of cannabis. But since my higher self had already descended for the purposes of full integration, it was the one sending me messages that it didn't want me to use it anymore. My higher self was sending me the messages, and it would do this through my emotions. Higher self was trying to tell me that weed and alcohol distorted my ability to connect to it and to feel it fully in my body moment to moment. The shame I was feeling was merely a symptom of the disappointment we were both feeling from this hazy barrier or distance. It was meant to signal me that something was awry. You see, my higher self was getting ready to fully merge with my body. This was the destiny that my higher self was preparing me for, and I kept sabotaging it by creating an energetic barrier through the use of a lower vibratory substance. Yes, alcohol and weed vibrate lower than your divine higher self. So it really depends on where you are. If your vibration is lower than the plant, then it's not going to affect you. But if you vibrate higher than the plant, then yeah, it's going to bring down your vibration. So to be very clear, the higher self is your unique fifth dimensional self. Or in my case, sixth dimensional self. It functions as an interface or a funnel for the oversoul of divine source energy to be able to operate your physical vessel. So think of your higher self like a software application for a divine source operating system. My depressed mood and cobwebs feeling meant I couldn't reach as high or deep states in meditation for days after, didn't have as many heart-expanding rushes of energy or downloads, and couldn't connect to higher dimensional beings when I wanted to channel. It was as if the signal was blocked. I noted that this was consistent with the feeling of a blocked signal when I would do readings for chronic weed smokers and alcoholics. It's like a blanket on their energy field, and all I see is a thick gray cloud. I can't download instantly for alcoholics or weed smokers like I can for others. By playing small, I also mean that I was going 2 steps forward and 1 step back. I wasted a lot of time working to raise my vibration back up to where it was before I'd smoked. Sometimes I even felt like I was helping the black hats. How happy they must have been knowing I wasn't stepping into my power, that I was just cutting myself off at the knees. Now, I know some of you will comment that weed has helped you to raise your frequency, that it keeps your anxiety at bay, or helps to open your chakras. I'm not saying that weed can't have its usefulness. I'm saying that, based on my observations, at some point in your energetic ascension process as a starseed, it may become a hindrance to the activation of your light body. Again, this is simply a matter of frequency and not a moral judgment. In my usual spirit of thoroughness, here are some of the other ways that I found marijuana kept me playing small. Using cannabis can reduce motivation through dopamine sensitization, which is the more dopamine you're used to releasing through consuming THC, the higher tolerance you have for dopamine. That means doing things that don't produce as much dopamine as smoking weed then feels boring. So you get lethargic and you don't want to do them. As a budding spiritual master, you are meant to be conscious. So being able to say no to the lower sensual pleasures of the first and second chakras is an activity in will and the power of your mind over programs and addictions, which are automated behaviors. Abstinence is a sign of advanced will and elevated consciousness. Basically, if you can't say no, that's a problem. Cannabis numbs you to feeling and being present. When you're high, you're not really present in the moment. Instead, you're in an altered state fueled by dopamine. So it's easy to get sidetracked when you're stoned, and depending on what or how much you've smoked, you could be close to falling asleep. Being stoned all the time can numb your feelings in the same way as psychological repression. In fact, many people start smoking weed because it alleviates anxiety. Naturally, weed helps to dull feelings of boredom too. All of this can lead to a dimming of your emotional intelligence, which is essential for communicating with your higher self and is a building block for intuition. This is because weed levels out your ability to know the subtleties of the different emotions you're feeling. Not to mention, switching to the party frequency is an easy way to escape uncomfortable feelings that come when we're triggered, alone with our thoughts, sad, worried, anxious, shameful, or otherwise working to alchemize the shadow or what we still need to transmute in our own and collective DNA for the benefit of humanity learning to live from the heart. Cannabis incapacitates you as you become more sensitive. As you progress in your light body activation, you'll know that it's eventually untenable to keep partying. The clearer and lighter you get, you'll either start to become totally incapacitated by drugs and alcohol or overstimulated to the point where you can't sleep all night because your energy is so sensitive to the drug. It messes with light body activation. As previously discussed, since the frequency of your higher self is very high, it runs your divine source, Sophia Christ consciousness through it. It requires that the hardware, your physical body, match its frequency. So if you're serious about merging with your 5D self, your higher self, you're already activating your crystalline DNA to activate the light body to house your 5D self. Smoking weed inhabits that activation process. My guides have likened it to putting sugar in your gas tank. Smoking weed can keep you distracted by things that you might not otherwise find very interesting, with less energy and focus for your starseed mission to embody spiritual mastery and create your heaven on earth. If you're going out and partying or spending hours playing video games, watching YouTube cat videos, and stuffing your face with junk food when you're high, you're not exactly on task now, are you? So here's a friendly pep talk. If you're thinking, but Debra, I'm not interested in spiritual mastery, then you know what? I'm going to call you out, and I'm going to say that I think you've succumbed to a lower dimensional timeline set by the Illuminati cabal or by your lower self, or you're simply refusing to realize or accept your mission and why you came to Earth this time around. No one likes being told what to do, but honestly, this is not the incarnation for anyone to play small. You are all needed. We have an important job to do, especially since the galactics aren't just going to land and do it for us. That's why they sent us. We starseeds came here to ascend, and not just ourselves, but to carry others with us who don't have the codes. We are evolving to become living stargates for ascension on Earth through our activated light bodies. And I hate to break it to you, but if you want that 144 strand DNA activation, you might have to give up weed. As far as I'm understanding it, 2020 is the year that starseeds are being called upon to step into their power and be living examples of the ascended energy we've been upgrading into. If you think that smoking weed might be getting in the way of you expressing the full potential of who you are, then in the spirit of self-love, I hope my experience inspires you to follow through on your hunch. Hey guys, thanks very much for tuning in. If you have any questions, please leave me a comment and do let me know. Do you still smoke weed? How does it affect your spiritual progress? What do you think about the theory that, weed has a certain vibration and either you're under that vibration or over it? Let me know in the comments. I'd really love to hear from you. Thanks so much, guys, for tuning in. I love you all, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye.